My dear friends, thank you for being so patient. So I want to start with a summary. And there's quite a lot happening in this week's Parsha, Parshat Vayishlach. I'm going to run through all of the different points that summarize what we're going to be reading this Shabbat. Yaakov was on his way home from to his father Yitzchak. It was 20-year absence. We're going to learn about 7 years that he worked for one wife, 7 years for another wife, and 6 years beyond that. He sends ahead messages to Esav trying to make peace. They report that Esav was approaching with 400 troops. This doesn't look like it's peaceful at all. It looks like it's a real problem. And he strategically divides his family into two camps. If the one camp is, God forbid, overwhelmed, the other could escape. So he prepared himself strategically. He then davened to Hashem, and Hashem promises to protect him. Yaakov sends Esav gifts, consider of 100 head of cattle, sheep, and herds, and he sends them one at a time. Now comes the famous story that Jacob crosses the Yabok River with his family, and then he remains alone. He actually goes back for some of the vessels that he left behind, and he encounters an angel. It's Esav's archangel. It says, Vayavek Ishimo, and there was a man who strove with him, but in fact it was Esav's angel, and he wrestles with him the entire night until dawn. As a result of that conflict, his sciatica nerve is dislodged, and Yaakov begins to limp. Yaakov refuses to let the angel go because he says, dawn is coming, I have to go. And Yaakov says to him, I will not let you go unless you give me a bracha. We'll come back to these points because they are absolutely instructive. The angel then blesses Yaakov, and he says that your name in future is not going to be Yaakov only, but you are going to be known as Yisrael. And the name Israel is born from the angel of Esau, soon endorsed by Hashem. So then we instructed that we should never eat this animal's sciatica nerve. That's the hind quarter of an animal, unless you know how to extract it, which is to traber the meat. In South Africa, we do not have experts, and it's preferable not to go through the process of extracting the sciatica nerve, and therefore all the meat in South Africa is only from the forequarter. There is no hind quarter sold as kosher in South Africa because of this memory of Yaakov, and we'll come back to that point. So Esav runs towards Yaakov and he embraces them, and they wept. And he actually kisses him. We'll soon learn about that. And Esav returns to his home in Seir, and Yaakov proceeds to the city of Sukkot, which he founded, and he named it. He named it Sukkot. We'll soon see the reason for that. He then purchases a plot of land. There are very few occasions that we actually taught about the purchase of land, and this is Shechem. And he sets up an altar to Hashem. In the city of Shechem, the sister of the brothers of Yaakov, his daughter, Dinah, is violated. She's kept hostage by the crown prince of the city called Shechem, and his name too was Shechem. The name of the prince and the name of the city. Shechem was infatuated with Dinah, desired to have her in marriage, and Yaakov's sons slyly agreed. They say, yeah, okay, we're going to go ahead with this marriage. We just have one detail that we want you to fulfill ahead of time, and that is that all the men should circumcise themselves. They agree, and there's a mass circumcision. The entire city, all the men of the city are recuperating from a major operation. They're not in good shape. At that point, Shimon and Levi enter the vulnerable city, and they wipe out all the male inhabitants. And they liberate Dinah. It was a ploy. And Yaakov expresses great displeasure at him not being able to, at them going out and killing and hurting the people. So Yaakov expresses great displeasure. Yaakov then arrives in Beisel, in Canaan. Hashem blesses him, and Hashem now changes his name to Israel. Before, it was the angel that had suggested the name would be Yisrael, but now Hashem officially gives that name. Then, tragically, en route to Hebron, Rachel passes away. This is just by Bethlehem, as she's giving birth to her second son, Binyamin. And Yaakov buries her right next to the roadside leading to Bethlehem. As we know today, when we visit Kever Rachel, it's not in Marat HaMachpelah in Hebron, It's not in Yerushalayim, it's on the roadside in Beit Lechem. Today they built all kinds of fortifications to be able to go there. And then there's the story of Reuven, the eldest son of Yaakov, who interferes with his father's marital life, whole interlude. Yaakov arrives in Hebron. Isaac dies, was buried in Cave HaMachpelah alongside his wife and his parents, Abram and Sarah, and him and his wife. And then the Torah lists the wives and the descendants of Esau. So we've got a lot of material, a lot of things happening in the portion. We're now going to go through some of the messages that we can derive from it. So firstly, when Yaakov sends messages to Esav, he says, Im Lavan garti va'echar ad ata. I lived with, sojourned, I resided with Lavan, and I was delayed until now. And Rashi says the word garti can mean to sojourn, to be a temporary dwelling, and then symbolically the word garti, as I've shown here in the form of the word, is made up of the same letters as Taf, Resh, Yud, Gimel, which stands for the number 613. And Rashi tells us that he was communicating to Esav where his standing was in life, what he stood for, what was important to him. And he says, I lived with Lavan, who was a cheat, who was a Ramai, who was a low individual who constantly changed the goalpost and did everything that was unscrupulous. And notwithstanding that I spent 20 years in the courtyard of Lavan, Taryag mitzvot shamarti, I kept every single one of the 613 commandments. Notwithstanding that I was living there for 20 years, I kept the 613 commandments. And the two commentaries in Rashi are actually very connected, because Garti means I resided there on a temporary visa. I never ever made it my home. I didn't move in so that became a defining place of who I am. I was a stranger in Lavan. And for that reason, I was able to keep all of the 613 commandments, because I never settled in to make Lavan my domicile, my true place of residence. I knew there was another place. And this is the first message that we're deriving from the story of Yaakov. He's telling his brother Esav, I want you to know where I stand in this world. I haven't moved and budged from my ideology and my purpose and my meaning as a Jew. I haven't compromised. I haven't descended from the levels that I wanted to achieve. I've aspired to the utmost of the spiritual values that we discussed long ago when you sold me the birthright and you were this physical man who was hunting and I was the person learning Torah. Don't for a moment think you're meeting a brother who's arriving from a foreign territory changed. The place didn't change me. And this is a message to all of us that we all live in different places. I always tell the story about when my kids were very young and we arrived at one of the resorts. And at the resort, what they do is they ask you lots of questions. You have to fill out a form. What's your name? What's your phone number? What's your web address? What's your email address? They ask you lots of questions. Where do you live? So on one occasion, we went into this resort, and I thought I would have fun. I was enjoying myself. So I said to the guy, why do you want to know where I live? Who cares where I live? I'm here. You have me in front of you. Why should I give you information as to where I live? So he explained to me, as was obvious, that they want to know where I live because I'm here today and I'm gone tomorrow. And if there's a problem, how are they going to ever find me? They got to know where I live. And the message that we discussed as a family when my children were small, we always try to derive what's the life message that you can take out of every event in life. And the message that we were sharing there was that a Yid has to know, Vul lebich, where is my place that I call home? Where do I live? I touch sides, lots of places. I frequent work. I go to sport and I go to the gym and I have social interaction. There's so many things that I have to also do in life. But where do I live? And a Yid lives in the world of his moral conviction, of his attachment to Torah and mitzvot. And that's what Yaakov was saying. Don't underestimate me for a moment. Don't think for a moment that I've changed because I'm coming from the house of Lavan. I lived there, but I didn't live there. I always knew where home was. Okay, it says that Yaakov was greatly afraid. All the commentaries say, why was Jacob afraid of his encounter with Esav notwithstanding that Esav had 400 men and he was coming with an army, why would Yaakov be distressed if Hashem had said that everything would be good? And we'll continue with this theme. And the commentaries explain, the Midrash explains, that he was afraid that he might be killed. We'll come back to that point, why he was afraid. But he was also afraid that he might kill. You know, a Yid has a problem with killing. It's not our pastime. It's not what we enjoy doing. And therefore, we have a problem. We are afraid not only what could happen to us, but what I would cause to somebody else because of the circumstances. I think it was Golda Meir who once said that I can forgive possibly the enemy who has caused us harm. I could never forgive them for causing us to cause them harm. That's not how the Israel Defense Force is an Israel Defense Force, notwithstanding all the Malshinim, all of those who speak Lashon Hara against the Jewish people and against Israel and against the army. It is one of the most moral armies in the world, if not the. And the principle of not wanting to harm, not wanting to hurt, is not something that we want to initiate, but we will defend ourselves. Now, the question is, we're going to deal with the fact that Esau is coming, and he said that if he comes to one place and smites it, the other camp will be able to escape. So Rashi says that he prepared himself in 3 ways, and this could be a model in life as well. He sent gifts, which was a compromise situation. It was looking how to appease. There was one method. The second method was he tavened. The verses say he turned to Hashem and said, "Help me, Hashem, please." So he prayed. And then he got himself ready for war. It was not going to be a pushover. So he didn't take one of the 3. He did all 3. He wasn't a Jew that says, Hashem's got to help and we'll pray and we're not going to get ourselves ready for the encounter. He made sure the bottom line was he was ready for war. If he had to fight, he would be ready to fight. He wasn't looking for it, so he sent gifts. But he wasn't looking to have a fight, but he was ready to do that if he needed. The Midrash also says that Hashem did a favor to the Jewish people, that he scattered us through the exile. We always bemoan the fact that we are scattered and sown across the whole world, continents and countries. We always are concerned that we're so scattered. But the Midrash actually says that one of the blessings of Jewish continuity is that there was always a machaneh ha'echat. The one camp might have been destroyed, but there was the other, the second camp would be able to be saved. And that's the movement that we have. We are in different countries, and when there's been a problem in one place, we know that there's a continuity in another. I want to talk about concessions, because we said the first thing he did was to send gifts. And the question has been raised. In fact, there was a rabbi who was asked by somebody in his community to say, we have to make concessions. It's the Jewish way to be able to make concessions. You compromise. And the proof is, look at our forefather Jacob. He was ready to give away. He gave away his herds and wealth, and he gave it to Esau. So we should be also ready to give away. And what's the obvious answer? Of course we want to be compromising. We want to be able to find a peaceful way forward. But the question that we have to ask ourselves is, what are we ready to compromise? Are we ready to compromise our spiritual values? Is that a precedent to say that we should adulterate our Jewish belief patterns and turn to reform our Judaism because we've seen that concessions have been made? Yaakov didn't give one iota of his religion. Im lavan garti, taryag mitzvahs, I kept 100% the mitzvahs. He didn't give up one iota of his religious persuasion and commitment. He gave away wealth. And Jews have, over the ages, had to give up so much of their possession. And there, we were much more ready to give up. But when it came to Rabbi Akiva being tortured to give up his faith, oh no, not one iota, not one tiny bit. So we should not confuse concession and being able to compromise with what it is that we're compromising. The message that we get from Yaakov is we can be ready to compromise our physical wealth, but never our ideology. That we protect 100%. So the question that we have to ask is that why was Jacob worried? We said he was worried that he might cause harm to Esau. He didn't feel good to do harm to Esau, to Esau. But he also says that he was worried about himself. Why would he be worried about himself? So the commentaries say that he thought that katonti mikol hachasadim mikol haemet, I'm too small. I'm not worthy of all of the kindness that Hashem has done for me. Maybe Hashem has already showered me with so much blessing beyond what I deserve that I'm not worthy for all the promises and blessings that Hashem gave me. Sure, I believe that God has the capacity to vanquish my enemies. But do I deserve that? And Rabbi Zalman of Liadi, the author of the Tanya, says there are two types of people in this world when good happens to them. When kindness happens, the reaction can be that every kindness bestowed upon by God upon a person should cause him to be exceedingly humble. This is the manner of Yaakov. The more Hashem did kindness to him, the more he became humble and saying, I'm not worthy. How can I be worthy for so much? It wasn't an expectation. It wasn't you owe me. It wasn't how come I don't have, why me, why didn't I get enough? The more he got, the more he realized that he was not deserving, perhaps, as opposed to Esau. And that is a force in which the more blessing the person has, the more we get arrogant, the more we become self-satisfied, and the more we have complaints about life. So there's two world visions. When things go well in our life, we can either become humble and recognize the kindness that Hashem has bestowed upon us, or we become more and more arrogant because look at me, I'm such a wealthy person, I have so much power, I can call the shots. And it actually plays to our arrogance and undoes us from within. Yaakov, because he was such a sensitive, spiritual human being, so this kindness that Hashem had done to him was only awakening in him a feeling of owing God and having much more than he deserved. So his lack of clarity as to whether it would go well with Esau wasn't because he didn't believe in Hashem's power. He didn't believe that perhaps he was worthy of Hashem exercising his power for him. Maybe he'd actually used up his quantum. Now comes the point that I said that there's always a battle before the battle, because look what happens over here. Look at the verse, and you tell me what the obvious question on this verse is. Jacob remained alone, and a man wrestled with him the whole night. So if Jacob is alone, where was this man from? There is no man. And if there is a man who's ready to wrestle with him, why would the verse introduce that whole episode by saying that Jacob was alone? Do you understand? Is there a glaring contradiction in the verse itself? Jacob was either alone or there was somebody else there. And that's why the commentaries reach to the whole interpretation that the man wasn't a man. The man was an angel. It was a force. It was the prince, the angel, the archangel of Esau who came to have conflict with Jacob. But let's take it one step deeper. How do you fight with an angel? How can you possibly have a wrestling match with an angel? Angels don't have bodies, they're not physical form. So what we need to really understand over here is that the archangel of Esau is the spiritual force of negativity. It is the drive and the energy in the world that represents the very opposite of what Yaakov stands for. And the way Hashem created each and every one of us is that we have from within a force of negativity, a force of Esau. We call it by a whole lot of different terms, the nefesh habahamit, the animal instinct. We call it the yetzer hara, the evil, negative inclination. We have a force inside of ourselves. And what very often happens before we go out to fight the real battle is we have an inner battle. And the inner battle is about who am I? How strong am I in my convictions? Do I believe in myself? And all of the negative elements of the internal turmoil that happens with a person, within a person, is what debilitates us to be able to go out and win the war. There's self-doubt. There's a question of, am I strong enough? Am I committed enough? Do I believe in myself? And the battle through the night, the longest night, Yaakov battles with this angel from when it got dark all the way until dawn. It's the battle of the night, of the darkness. It's when we're not seeing clearly. We don't have the illumination to give us a clarity of purpose, and we can't see the way forward. And we all have these battles. And we have to know that before we go out to fight the battle that is confronting us, the event in our life that we have to confront, we have to win the inner battle. We've got to be victorious in the inner battle. And if the battle is about why do you have to do this, and is this your real identity, and why do you have to be so Jewish, and why do you have to be so involved with Israel, and all the questions that limit the expression of who we are as a Jew. So this is the turmoil that happens inside of ourselves. Do we really need to fight for this? Is it really important? How valuable are these values? And Yaakov is the prototype individual who represents being able to overcome this internal turmoil. The Vayavek ish imoy, and a man fought with him the whole night. Refers, because there was no man, there was nobody there, refers to the angel and whatever force that is that happens inside of ourselves. And there's lots of darkness in our life and lots of attempts to bring us down. And we have a capacity to overcome it. And once we do, when we know who we are, and we know what our mission is, and we know what we're attached to, and we know that we have our Kadosh Baruch Hu, we have God at our side, then we can confront the physical Esav. The physical impediments, the physical trials and tribulations of life, we have to win the battle before that battle. We have to know what we are and what we have and what strength we come with, where we descend from and what power Hashem has given us. Because when we can identify that part of ourselves, we can take on the world. So there is a huge message that is derived from this conflict that happens throughout the night, throughout the galut, throughout the exile, throughout the darkness. There's always been a question and a fight, a physical fight that we have to go about and we have to confront. But we needed to get our heads right and our hearts right and our souls right. We needed to make sure that we were online within ourselves so that we could win the external battle out there. That's the challenge that Yaakov is teaching us and how to win it. Now what happens is when the angel saw that he couldn't prevail, so he touched him on his thigh. Nachmanides, the Ramban, says that this is a sign of the pain that happened to the Jewish people throughout the Galut. It represents the physical suffering of exile that we've had for thousands of years. And it's all alluded to in the war, in the battle that brings and debilitates Yaakov. But ultimately, as we'll soon see, Vayovo Yaakov Shalem, Yaakov emerges from this hole and complete and healed. He's healed from the wound. And the commentary, Hasidus, in fact, specifically speaks about the thigh. Why was this negative force trying to hurt him specifically in the thigh? And we know that there's a stature of a human being. A human being stands upright. Our head is on top, our heart is below our heads, and our functionally limbs are below those, and our feet that carry us and make us stand above the ground. So it's very symbolic of trying to bring down, knock our feet from under us. From that which stands elevated, that which holds us higher, that allows us to stand in our human stature upright with a clarity of our order, head on top and then heart and then functions of our body. So the attempt to bring down Yaakov, to knock his feet from under him, is the attempt to bring us down to the physical world. And that is the attempt of the angel of Esav. It's to tell us we don't have to be so Jewish, so religious, so committed. We're getting carried away with ourselves. Try and detach us from our spiritual aspirations. Bring us down to the physical. Knock our feet from under us so that we become one and connected with the physical world, with the earth below us. And Yaakov survives it. He has pain, he carries on limping. He doesn't lose his feet from under him, and ultimately he comes to his destination, as we'll soon see, Shalem, healed from all the tzaros that he had to go through. Now, Midrash, the Gemara actually says in Chulin that the angel appeals to Yaakov and he says, please let me go. The day is about to break. The Midrash really dramatizes this event. And he says, I'm an angel, and from the day that I was created, I was waiting for this morning. This morning is my chance to sing the praises of Hashem. I've never had them until now. The Gemara in Chulin says this was not just a regular morning. This was a morning in which this angel was finally going to have his turn to be able to, it's an angel, so the angel is also created by Hashem. I have the possibilities of singing praise to Hashem. He was desperate to leave. Now, can you imagine? There's a fight going on. Can you imagine any people fighting, and they really, this is a battle that is causing exceptional harm. And then when finally the one prevails over the other, and the aggressor now says, "Let me go. I have to go. I have to have a meeting. I have an urgent meeting with God. I've really got to go." And Yaakov says to him, "Barcheni, bless me." You imagine such a scenario? You have a fight with somebody, and at the end, when you win the battle and you're letting the guy go, you say, I need your bracha. Give me your blessing. Why would Yaakov need a blessing from Esau? And why would that be the end of the battle? It sounds absolutely absurd that there could possibly be a reason for him to want to have a bracha. But there's this beautiful message. Whenever one goes through a negative encounter, when one goes through challenge and one goes through pain, when one goes through COVID, when one goes through all of these challenges in our life, and the Jews in general, and anti-Semitism, and the world, and the history, there's so many difficult, dark moments. When we endure, we can't just walk out as survivors. And we can't walk away with a history and a memory of all the terrible things that happened to us. We can't walk around feeling like a victim that survived. There's something much more powerful that has to be derived from the events, the dark events that we have to endure. And the point that Yaakov was saying was, Barcheni, how can I find the blessing that is going to emerge from this pain that I've been through? I cannot simply tolerate and accept that all of this pain that I went through was to merely come out exactly as I was before, or maybe worse, limping. We've got to look the difficulty in the eye and say, Barcheni, what is the blessing that I can derive from this? How can I grow? How can I advance? How can I become something bigger? That's the challenge. To transform adversity into something that can speak to us of growth. So that's the thing, what we have to ask from every challenge that goes through our life, and every pain that we have to endure. We've got to be able to look at that moment and say, Barcheni, how can I take out a blessing from the darkness that can give it meaning and purpose, that can explain why I went through it in the first place? And it's painful, and it's difficult, and it might elude us for years. But the quest is to say, I'm not only going to be a victim who survived. I'm going to find the bracha. And what is the bracha? The bracha was transformational. The bracha is that the angel tells him about something that's going to happen very soon, and that Hashem is going to name him from Yaakov to Yisrael. What is the difference between the two names? Yaakov, we know, was the name given to him when he was born because the Yado Ochezet Ba'akev Esav, his hand was holding onto the heel of Esav. The word Yaakov has an implication that we are holding onto the heel, that we are coming an afterthought, that we are merely trying to keep up with Esav's world. And that is a dark, difficult depiction of the Jew holding onto the heel of society, the Nochschlepper, who's trying to make it in a world in which he doesn't really have a place. And the word Yisrael, ki sarita im Elokim, because you were able to strive and to fight with godly forces, vatuchal, and you succeeded. The word Yisrael means srara, princehood, power, leadership, strength. So we actually have a transformation. What is the bracha? The bracha was a transformation of Yaakov's life. He went in being the holder, the person who's struggling to find a place in somebody else's world. And he emerges from the darkness of that night, renamed, redefined, re-explained in terms of his purpose. I am a prince. I have a power to impact on this world. Hashem put me here for a meaning. I'm not holding on to anyone's heel. I have a reason and a meaning that is going to impact and change the world. And it's interesting that whereas as Avraham, when he gets his new letter added to his name, and Avram becomes Avraham, so we never refer to him as Avram in the Torah again. His name is changed completely. By Yaakov, we have many references to the name Yaakov even after he's named Israel, because there's two modes that a Jew operates in. Sometimes we are downtrodden, sometimes we are dejected, sometimes we go through pain of exile, and we are going through the Yaakov moments. But we're always looking for the blessing. We're always looking for the purpose. We're always looking to win the battle. Firstly, the internal battle, then have the strength to confront the external battle, and then ultimately to realize the blessing that can come out of it. I can grow and I can take control. I can have meaning and purpose. As Viktor Frankl describes in Man's Search for Meaning, when he says that a human being is empowered, always empowered, even when you're taken away, God forbid, in chains, you are still empowered with the choices, the moral choices that we make. And he says, people stood in the lines on the way to the gas chambers, and they still made choices to help another human being or to trample another human being. And that choice was never taken away. And that we can be princes, even as we are in the most dire straits, because we've made the right, correct, moral choices that can impact on the world, on ourselves and on the world around us. So this time is marching on because the rabbi came late, we know that, and I again apologize. This is this last week of school and it's been a bit bedlam. Okay, that's a slide about the Midrash that says that Esav ran to kiss him by Yishakehu, and the words written in the Torah have little dots on them. The Torah doesn't have vowels normally, and the word by Yishakehu has a whole lot of dots on top that implies that you need to read into the word. The word is not to be understood as simply as it implies that he kissed him. And Amar Rabbi Yana in the Midrash, that he didn't actually intend to kiss him. He intended to come and harm him. But the Hashem intervened miraculously. His neck became hard. He could not hurt him. And that was the kiss. We've got to be a bit wary of the kiss of Esav. Sometimes it's better to know that Esav is coming to harm us so we can know exactly how to respond. Sometimes he comes and pretends that he means us good. That's worse. It's worse when we think the enemy is actually wanting to make peace with us. Or they tell us that they're not wanting to make peace with us, and we say, no, they didn't really mean that. What they meant was that they want to make peace with us. We should be careful. We should know the enemy. So when he comes to place Sukkot, he called it Sukkot. Well, we know what a sukkah is. A sukkah is what we build on Sukkot. It's a temporary hut. So it says, Vayiven lo bayit, he built for himself a house, ulemiknei asa Sukkot, and for his cattle he made temporary sheds. So we know that for himself, for his true self and his true priorities, he constructed a home. For his cattle, his material possessions and other peripheral elements of life, he made a sukkah, he made a shed. Because we've got to make sure that we know what our priorities are in life. You know, I often used to in New York, in some of the poorer neighborhoods, where the houses were run down and there was garbage in the streets, and you could see the people were living in dire poverty, and very often outside the house was a Cadillac. Because you've got to have your priorities in life. Can a human being live without a Cadillac? You got to make sure that you have the assets that are going to make you feel good. So we got to make sure what are the things, and it's back to the point that we said right at the beginning. I lived with Lavan. I didn't live there. I sojourned there. I live in my moral values. I didn't actually become part of Lavan's house. And now we're revisiting that priority in life and saying that when he came to the destination, he came there and he said that for my cattle I suffice with sheds, for my home, for my family, for what is the real me, that's where I put the emphasis of making a permanent home. And God forbid we get it wrong. God forbid money precedes family. And God forbid that making money precedes a relationship with children. You've got to make sure that we know what it is the real thing and what is the peripheral and add-on thing. We've got to know who we are. So Yaakov teaches us on a few occasions through this parsha what is the priority of life. Don't make more for your assets. Don't protect your assets more than you do the real priorities of your life, your family and your religious focus and your commitment to Hashem. I see that we are getting to the last moment, but let's try and see if we can still squeeze in another 1 or 2 slides. So there's a word that when he gets to Shem, it says, Vayavo Yaakov Shalem. The word Shalem is whole. And what word is the word Shalem related to? Obviously, Shalom, which is peace. But the Talmud tells us that the word Shalem transcends the word Shalom. Because you see, the word Shalom means that you've created a peace between two disparate things. There's this side, there's that side, and you work out a way that they can correlate. You make peace. Made peace can sometimes be between enemies. You made peace. The word Shalem is a much, much more organic form of completeness. It's when the different parts that you thought were separate parts actually become completely one essentially, not because you've stuck them together, not because they've worked out a way to coexist, but because they really one. Am Yisrael, we don't only speak about Shalom and we speak about Shalom Bayit, but we transcend that in our goal. We don't only want to have peace that exists between disparate things. Shalom means that we recognize that if it scratches here, it hurts there. If one Jew on the other side of the world is in pain, then I cannot be complete in my success. That's how much we are part of one another. And when it says that Yaakov came Shalem, he came complete, it wasn't just saying that he came in peace. It says that he came Shalem. What does Rashi say? Quotes from the Gemara. Shalem begufo, he was whole in his wealth, in his body. Shalem b'mamono, he was whole in his wealth. Shalem b'torato, he was wholesome in his doctrine, in his religious affirming of God. He was whole in his Torah. He was whole in everything. And all of the parts were actually one. All of the parts really were pulling in exactly the same goal. We have a physical part of our being. We have our financial well-being. We have our social requirements. We have our moments in the gym and the moments in the shul and the moments at work. And we have moments at home and with friends. Shalem means something pulls it all together. There's something wholesome about all these disparate parts of my life that pulls them together. It's all in the service of Hashem. It's all because there's a God whom I believe in. And that's why, of course, I have to be physically well. Because Hashem's put me over here to serve Him. I have to serve Him with a healthy body. And I have to have a healthy mind. And I have to have a healthy sense of religious purpose. But these are not add-ons. It's not like I stuck this part into my calendar, so I do a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and I put a cherry on the icing, and then I've got all the different things. They're not different things. Shalem means that it's organically one. That's what we strive for, and that's what Yaakov emerges from such a terrible encounter, the darkness of the night, limping, but ultimately he comes out, Shalem begufo, completely healed in his body. He didn't limp any longer. Not physically, not spiritually, not in terms of his ideology, not in terms of his wealth. It all came together. Everything suddenly had meaning and purpose and satisfaction in what Hashem had given him. That is the shalem that Jacob is teaching us. And I think I have one final slide, and we'll end with that one. It's actually too long. I'm going to end with this one. So Rachel passes away, and she's buried on the roadside, Derech Efrat. Efrat is right in that area when you go out of Yerushalayim and you're traveling eastwards towards Beit Lechem. So what was the reason that Yaakov buries Rachel at the roadside? It almost appears as less respect for her than the others who were buried in Marat HaMachpelah, in the cave of Machpelah, which was in Hebron, which Abraham had purchased for this huge amount. Why on the roadside? And the Midrash says something beautiful. Jacob foresaw that the exiles from Jerusalem would pass that way on the way to Babylon. They would be walking east, and they would travel that road towards Babylon. And he therefore buried Rachel, who no doubt would have wanted to be buried there for this reason, so that she might pray for the mercy of those who were going into exile, as it says in the book of Jeremiah, Kol B'Ramah, a voice is heard in the heavens above. Rachel mevaka al baneha. Rachel is weeping for her children. And the Midrash actually tells us that there were a number of people that pleaded to God to have mercy on the Jewish people, including Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and all of them. And it was only when it came to Rachel, Hashem rejected their prayers one after the other. When Rachel came forward, Hashem said, Meni kolech mi bechi. Stop crying, Rachel, because this is too much. I cannot resist the cry. And she cried for her children, and she was there when her children went by. And that is the image of a matriarch of the Jewish people whose whole purpose was to serve her children in life and to create life and to bring about a future for the people Israel. And even in her passing, her concern was the well-being of her descendants. So there's something miraculously special about Beit Lechem, about Bethlehem, and why people go and pray at Rachel's kever, at her graveside. She prayed for the Jewish people then when we went into exile, and still prays for us as we continue in exile until, please God, Hashem brings Mashiach and we return from exile back to the promised land with joy and with happiness. So I'm going to end over here, and I really thank everyone for joining. And I, once again, I say I appreciate so much that you waited for me when I wasn't together, coming back from my graduations. I'm going back to another graduation right now. In between my shir and time ran out. Thank you for joining, and please God, we'll continue maybe next week on Wednesday night. We'll do something relating to Hanukkah. Hanukkah is celebrated as of next Thursday night. It's important that there's a Hanukkah lamp in each home, so prepare your homes with a menorah. And there will be a drive-in Hanukkah celebration at Great Park next Thursday night at 5:45. And you can bring children, and you'll keep everyone in the car so you're safe, and we'll have snacks that will be packed COVID-friendly, and you'll join us. Have a wonderful, wonderful week, and thanks for joining. God bless.
Thanks, Rabbi. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Shukr, Rabbi. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you, everyone.
Cheers, Rabbi.
Yeah.
What did he say? Where's the snacks?
Yeah,
Where's the snacks? There are no snacks.